Hey, this is Stephen Platinum, your friend in wrestling with Platinum versus AEW Dark. It was episode 52, and it took place on September 15th, 2020. Special thank you to the people who said that ever since they found out I was doing these AEW Dark reports, went back and listened to old ones. I think that's really cool, and a bit of a surprise if I'm being honest. I think it's great. I've developed my own system for first-time listeners of rating these matches because they are enhancement matches for the most part. Except for usually the main event and perhaps one other match. I've come up with a 3-check system. The first check is for if the proper person was put over in a way that was memorable. The second check you get if you made the person who was supposed to be enhanced look good. And then the third check is if the person doing the enhancing looks good in the process as well. I usually pick who I think did the best job as enhancement talent, and then I have usually a few things to say along the way, usually right at the top of the show. And so here we are at the top of the show. I will say this is a much improved AEW Dark from the last one. The last one, nothing was connected. There were no angles advanced. There was really very little said. I'm also very happy that Excalibur is there with Taz, but also Vita Scott. I think Vita Scott did a tremendous job during the Women's Tag Team Cup tournament, and I was really glad to see her here. I hope it is a semi-permanent arrangement, if not a permanent one. The interplay between Vita Scott and Taz I find very enjoyable. It could get old, but they kind of save squabbling for only 1 or 2 times a show, and I think Taz is having fun interacting with Vita Scott. And Excalibur does a really good, serviceable job. That sounds like an insult. It is not. And when you have a 3-person announce team, someone has to do the sort of the meat and potatoes stuff, and that is definitely Excalibur. Taz puts over Ricky Starks, his guy, who's going to join them at commentary at some point, and calls him AEW Stark, which makes me laugh. And then they get into this discussion because Vita discusses a few things, including putting over the match with Penelope Ford and Dani Jordyn that we're going to see. I think it's great that Vita Scott is sort of the advocate for the women. I think it's a very smart thing. And then Taz sort of admonishes her for going on and on, even though he did that himself and she didn't really do that, which is, again, funny. And Excalibur goes on how he can talk about suplexes at length if Taz wants, and actually cracks Taz up, which makes me laugh. The vibe on this AEW Dark, because last week's didn't really have a personality, and these AEW Darks need to have personality of their own, and the one that they're doing here is the vibe is fun, but there's a couple serious things to talk about, which I think is really, really good. Match number 1 is Brandi Rhodes against Red Velvet, and as anybody who's listened to this for a while knows, I'm a fan of Red Velvet. I think she looks great. I think her ring work is solid, and she does a really great job on AEW Dark every time it's on, and this time is no exception. And it's much tougher because Brandi Rhodes, sometimes her ring work can be very clunky and robotic, but it goes much smoother here than I've seen before. So Red Velvet definitely gets that first and second check, and then that third one as well. Notable spots here, of course, Brandi Rhodes has Bran, her doll, it's the weird thing about this to me, though, is Dustin is kind of put out there and he sort of indulges all of Brandi's stuff, which is what it is, but I'll bring up some problems that I had later on. Red Velvet and Brandi have a great match. Anna Jay at one point distracts Brandi, which I actually thought might lead to a Red Velvet pin, which would have been interesting, but it doesn't, and Brandi does go over with her spear eventually. But 3 checks here. No, Brandi doesn't go over with the spear. She locks in a choke out a la Anna Jay in front of Anna Jay. Which I think is a nice bit of sort of callback and continuing their thing. I really liked it, and Red Velvet did a good job in defeat here. Match number 2, Butcher and Blade against Daniel Garcia and Kevin Blackwood. Something I really like that Butcher and Blade did, and of course they've got Eddie Kingston at ringside, is they started this match off hot, which I think was great, with everybody brawling. Butcher and Blade just came in swinging. and they're beating them up. But Garcia and Blackwood managed to get them outside of the ring and do a little teamwork of their own, which is great. But as soon as they get pulled out by Butcher and Blade, this match goes south, which is exactly a great story to tell. This week, yes, they're enhancement matches, but that doesn't mean you can't get stories over that. And everybody found unique ways to tell different stories, and I really like that. Garcia and Kevin Blackwood looked good in defeat, and Butcher and Blade, more importantly, looked really great in victory. So 3 checks here, good stuff. Match number 3, the one I gotta admit, I was looking forward to perhaps the most, along with the tag match with Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison against Santana and Ortiz. I wanted to see how Dani was going to do here, and she looked fantastic. And again, stories of the match. You had Kip Sabian reading the burn book. You had Penelope Ford being mad that she was in the burn book. You had Dani Jordyn fired up because they did something to her burn book. You had Vita Scott putting over the fact that Dani Jordyn had a knee injury, but she's recovered from it, and she looks really great. And she does look really great. Dani Jordyn, I think, is tied for doing the best job of all the enhancement talent. I'll just put it out there. Penelope Ford eventually goes over with her fisherman suplex. Looks good in victory, but Dani Jordyn really did herself a lot of favors with this match. Really fantastic. I would advise you checking it out. It's the 3rd match on AEW Dark number 52. And tell me that I'm wrong. It's really cool that they're working in angles and stories for every one of these matches instead of just going out there and getting squashed. Now, there's moments for that. And our next match had that. Brian Cage against Megabyte Ronnie. Megabyte Ronnie's got a really great look, a really dumb name. And the hot dog people's elbows thing was fucking atrocious. That said, Brian Cage looked really great. And I like that he's game. I like that Brian Cage has always been a guy who's game to do whatever. I mean, he's a guy who lost, after all, to Tessa Blanchard to help put over Tessa Blanchard when they were in Impact. But right here, the hot dog people elbow is ridiculous, but at least Brian Cage gets mad about it and then drills him. We have the return of the drill bit, which is interesting. And of course, Taz is going crazy. Ricky Starks is going crazy. They put over the FTW as a world title. They need to do something with that. They need to have someone challenge for this FTW title, or else it's meaningless. Brian Cage busting out a 619 was really impressive. I forgot that was something that he did once in a while. 3 check marks all along. Brian Cage really did it, really was game for letting Megabyte Ronnie do his fucking stupid hot dog people's elbow thing. So that's one of those things that risks actually diminishing Brian Cage, but Brian Cage manages to look good in spite of it. Let's move on to match number 5. Santana and Ortiz against Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison. Again, just a phenomenal job by Griff Garrison. Brian Pillman Jr. as well, but is kind of honestly to be expected. But Griff Garrison really looked like a star. He also towers over Santana and Ortiz. He's really put together a young man and looked really great. Like I said, I mean, my notes here is looks like a star. The finisher from Santana and Ortiz I really liked a lot. That powerbomb rolling into the kick to the head. Brian Pillman Jr. took the pin here, which I find really interesting. So I love the fact that I'm seeing Griff Garrison more. Santana and Ortiz, as I've stated many times, is actually my favorite tag team in AEW, which might surprise people, but their work is just so solid. And I am looking forward to that street fight or that they're going to have. The parking lot brawl, that they're going to have with Best Friends. And Santana and Ortiz look very serious here, and it was very easy for the commentators to put over the story of Santana and Ortiz are gearing up for this parking lot brawl, which is going to be the main event of Dynamite, which I think is really cool. I think it's really great. That's how you should pay off angles. Match number 6, Will Hobbs against Jesse Sorensen. I'm glad to see Jesse Sorensen getting work, and he looks really good here. Again, I think he throws really good punches and things like that. But this was about Will Hobbs, and my favorite spots, besides his Oklahoma Stampede over the shoulder version, which I think looks really good and is a great finisher for Will Hobbs, is when Jesse Sorensen went for a crossbody and Will Hobbs just pushed him away. There's something about that is so simple and effective. I really liked it. 3 check marks. This was a relatively short squash, which is exactly what the fuck it should have been. Great job. Match number 7, Skylar Moore and Roche Chanel, who I'm always glad to see on AEW Dark. Skylar Moore is meat and potatoes. I think she's going to go out there and she's going to do a good job, and she does it here. Roche Chanel gives a little bit of gimmick. And I know sometimes people say, oh, enhancement people shouldn't have that big of a... I disagree. I think it provides a little interesting color here. And they're going against Diamante and Ivelisse. And I've been saying for weeks that we don't even put over the fact that Diamante and Ivelisse won that women's tag thing. But Veda Scott certainly does her job here of putting it over. Diamante and Ivelisse, this match is kind of meat and potatoes with everybody kind of working their individual gimmicks, and Diamante and Ivelisse eventually picking them apart and winning. And that's great. And then we put over the fact that Thunder Rosa is going to defend her NWA Women's title against Ivelisse on Dynamite. Fantastic. 3 checks. We got 3 checks going on all night. Can we keep it up through all 11 matches? We shall see. So Colt Cabana against QT Marshall. Again, a really good story told here. QT Marshall physically looks better and better every time he comes out to the ring. And I think that's awesome. I'm glad they've stopped noting that QT Marshall's hairline is receded. I always think that they go on and on and on about that. And what the fuck is the point of demeaning the guy when he's doing really fucking good work? I'm glad they stopped that. They don't really put over the seriousness of the feud of the Nightmare family and the Dark Order that's taken place, which I find really strange. I also find it strange that QT Marshall is out there with Ali and nobody else. Why wouldn't Brandy Rhodes and or Dustin be there to back him up? Certainly Colt Cabana has the entire Dark Order there to back him up, and that's the story, that the Dark Order helps him in little ways throughout the match. And in fact, that running knee thing by Stu Grayson near the end looked phenomenal. And then Colt Cabana uses Brody Lee's roaring clothesline upon direction to get the win. Allie ends up looking really stupid here because she just stands at ringside while the Dark Order does all this heel stuff without really anything to say about it. And part of it is they don't get her on camera. Why the hell wouldn't you put Allie on camera, by the way? But there's a chance to have some interplay with Anna Jay and her, and I think they missed a lot of opportunities here to do little things like that. Nonetheless, this is where it wasn't really an enhancement match, but it did put over stories effectively. I would give it the 3 checks. Number 9 match. This is the one I was looking forward to as well. Brandon Cutler against Peter Avalon, the once Initiative tag team that are now going against each other. Will one of them get their first win? I said no. Even though traditionally AEW does not do double count out or schmozzy finishes and things like that, it was pretty easy to predict that you're going to have the double count out there, but the journey was worth the destination, as it was a really good match, and Leva did this great thing where she was, she's there for Peter Avalon, but at the same time she doesn't want them to split up, and she doesn't want Peter Avalon to cheat. All this was conveyed through the performance, and I thought that was very effective. It gave the commentators something to talk about of interest. Vita and Taz getting into a bit of a debate about whether Leva wants them to stay as a team or not, I thought was really great. And Taz was immediately proven wrong by the obvious actions that were going on in the ring and at ringside with Vita. I really liked this whole match, liked the interplay. Double count out, so I suppose we're going to get some kind of other match, return match of a more final nature. That is very interesting. If they do it, I hope they continue to follow up with this angle. Match number 10, second to last. By the way, 3 checks for that, obviously. In fact, it's just 3 checks all around throughout the night. Good job, AEW Dark and everybody involved with it. A big bounce back, I think, from last week's rather ineffectual show. Best Friends against Max Stardom. Boy, some of these indie names are fucking terrible. And Dante Smiley, which I don't really have that much of a problem about. Is he related to Norman Smiley? I don't know. Nobody even brought that up. Got an unusual last name like that. It sort of begs the question, does it not? Best Friends look the part, serious. I've been critical in the past where I felt like Chuck Taylor doesn't really hold his weight in their tag matches, but Trent is one of my favorite performers overall in wrestling. Yes, I said it. I think he does a fantastic job and doesn't get heralded for it nearly enough. But Chuck Taylor definitely pulls his weight here. They both look great. They give up just enough to give the guys something to do, but at the end of the day, this is about them stomping them and then having a thing with Santana and Ortiz. I love the fact that Santana and Ortiz and Best Friends did not interact on AEW Dark. It wasn't necessary. The commentators make sure they put over the story of look how serious they are. They win with that pile driver rolling into the other jumping pile driver thing, which looks really brutal. I am looking forward to that motherfucking parking lot brawl on Dynamite. Yeah. Vita and Taz argue about this as well, about the nature of pressure. And again, these are just different takes on things, and I really enjoy it. Last match, we got 4 members of the Dark Order against Private Party and Gun Club. Pretty much standard fare. Billy shines in these matches because he just knows how to direct traffic and do things in a logical way. A small thing that I really liked near the end of the match when Austin was running wild and he went for his quick draw, which the commentators didn't notice, but I noticed when he does that hip toss into the neck breaker thing, which is not a finisher I particularly love, but it is his finisher. And he gets a chance to do it, but they cut him off, pick him up into the gory, into a top rope flipping cutter thing. Looks really good. Dark Order picks up the win, which is the right call. And that's our show. We get some promos for Dynamite. And again, Dynamite trying to capitalize on that $1 million that they got, which is awesome. And they basically lay out the whole card for us. The main event is that parking lot brawl, which I think is great. FTR, which is going to be in a non-title match against the Jurassic Express, the 2 members that are threatening anyway. Thunder Rosa against Ivelisse for the NWA Women's title. Jericho and Hager against Private Party. We're capitalizing on this announcement that Jericho and Hager are going to throw themselves in the tag division. MJF in action, and Hangman Page against Frankie Kazarian. All right. A very good AEW Dark. Really standout performances by Dani, Jordyn, and Griff Garrison. My name's Stephen Platinum, your friend in wrestling.